always thought in terms of financial terms and the return on equity, return, whether I get it. Now, when I went into this knowledge park, I said that we must create this knowledge. I did not have money in mind at all. I did not know whether the knowledge park would make money. I had only one idea: what does the country need and what does the country want, and what we should do in the terms of the country. The question which Kennedy asked, he said, it's not what the country will do for you, what you will do for the country. As innovators, I think you should really look at, take the pride of achievement in doing what. My grandson, who's in the what you call the cutting edge of the field in United States, and I mean, incidentally, I could not even understand what my grandson says. Very difficult for me to understand. He does machine learning, computer, and he goes into this automation. He just finished his PhD in Berkeley and has become the assistant professor in Chicago. Now, he had been offered very large value jobs in the corporate sector. He says, I am not interested in any of these things. I am interested in the whole idea of creating something new. I am doing something which is entirely innovative. So I am not bothered about the money at all. Today, an average citizen in the United States and the people whom I meet in India, they are not bothered about how much money they are going to make, how much profit they are going to make. I think they get terribly excited by the way in which they are able to bring value to the country, solve some of this country's problems. That brings me to the question which Dipanvita had a difficulty. Dipanvita wants me to be here because I had been with her for the last 20 years, ever since we created this institution. So my presence here is symbolic, not because of my domain knowledge, because I am a sort of a father figure for many of these people. I have to be here. So I had to do this routine job of inauguration. But at the same time, she had a problem. She wanted me to speak on some subject. I said, what subject I can speak on? Now, at this stage of my life, we are now on to the anvil. We very clearly see that society is changing so fast. Our education system is not coping up with this change in the society. We are still very slow in the transformation of the education system. And government is really controlling the system of the higher education. It's extremely difficult to deal with that. So one of the ambitions that we are creating a new university in Chennai, near Chennai, which is addressing this bringing in a new group of generation. We are not looking at tomorrow. We are looking at 5 years from hence. Whether we are able to bring in an entirely new group of people whose thinking will be very different, who will not be thinking in terms of my education is for getting me a job. My education is for the purpose of getting me a job with a high enough salary for me to survive. Our whole purpose of this whole education will be to create knowledge. The purpose of this whole education is to create innovation. The purpose of this whole education is to lead an ethical life. The purpose of the education is to do something for the sake of the country, to address what he called the huge problem of the people below the poverty line, people who are really talking in terms of addressing the universal basic income. Now, the people who are really joined together in this whole effort are very exciting people like Raghuram Rajan, who had been formerly governor of the Reserve Bank of India, who is now in the Chicago University. Very famous Indians, people in the United States, and some very great individuals from India. I mean, one of the persons whom I was so fascinated is a mathematician by name Manjul Bhargava. He is the only Indian who has ever got the Field Medal and is equivalent to Nobel Prize. He's just about 37, 38. And people like him, we all joined together and said, can we create something of this type, which would really produce a generation of people who could think on different lines, who could think in terms of innovation as the criteria and ethical innovation as the criteria. People who are fixated on this idea of developing a new product, developing a new solution to various countries' problems. I think this is, for today is 29th, 31st we are kickstarting the whole thing. I'm maybe going to Delhi, and and we'll start off this whole process of recruiting the new students, and we are doing. This is the whole education system has to change if we are going to change, accept that this is a new paradigm that has really evolved in the world, and we are going to deal with this new paradigm with an entirely different process of education which can transform the students. It's such a pleasure thing. I must say that I was feeling very tired today. I said that I've been running around for 6 days, and I have had my pains and difficulties. But when I looked at people like Bhan, I said that here is a person who came this morning from Geneva, and he comes here just for 3 hours. He's going to give his talk and is going to go back to where? I don't know. Delhi? I don't know. He runs all over the place. Look at the passion with which this person is behaving. Ultimately, life is worth living, not for the sake of money which you are making, but for the sake of passion which you are able to bring into the life. For the sake of the service which you are able to give to the nation. For the sake of benefits which you are able to confer on people. I think these matter a lot. And if that is the purpose for which with the intention with which we created this knowledge park, and it thrilled me when I went and around this exhibition and saw that whole lot of youngsters, many people who I saw are the youngsters within the age of 30 or something like that. So I think we have achieved our purpose. I'm sure that in the coming, in the afternoon and later tomorrow, you will have fruitful discussions, and it will benefit you a lot. Thank you very much, and I have pleasure in inaugurating this. I mean, it is just like in the films. Sometimes some scenes will go on. Somewhere in the middle, I think they will say, directed and produced by so-and-so. It is just like that. It always happens. I mean, you don't know whether the film has begun or not. The film has begun, but at one point they will come and say that this is directed and produced by so-and-so. I think I'm grateful for performing this function after Lalitesh speech and Sri Kumar. Sri Kumar is a very old friend. I think we know each other for 30 years. And when Biocon was initiated by me at that time. And so it's so nice of both of you to have come and given a start to this conference. And soon after break, I think we'll hear Bhan. I'm sure everything will go well. Thank you very much.
I would like, because I want Mr. Vaghul and Dr. Bhan and everyone present here to also celebrate a new partnership that we would like to embark and we plan to embark on. And I invite Dr. Finn Romanes and Michelle Wade from the state of Victoria to please come to the stage. And you have to, all of you know that we do grand challenges. And while conducting, we've been thinking, who can be our next partner? And we had 2 very fruitful meetings in Hyderabad and in Bangalore. And we were discussing what kind of, so on. And of course, Government of Karnataka. I don't see, yeah, but he's around, yes. We have the advisor, Mr. Srivastav from Government of Karnataka. So we've ran grand challenges, and we've been wondering what kind of cooperation that the Government of Victoria and IKP can enter on. So we are going to exchange an MOU which just states that we are going to work on health-related grand challenges and probably exchange of startup programs so that both the countries benefit. We have our complementary skills. We get all our partners from both the countries together, and to see if we can actually address a few problems that, if solved, can benefit and have large-scale impact, very large-scale impact. And with that, I invite Dr. Finn Romanes to say a few words and exchange.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Deephanwita. And so I'll only say a very few words. And Mr. Vaghul, just if you're having difficulty with Latidesh's accent, I can bring on a very strong Australian accent for you if you wish. But I won't do that. So briefly, if I can just say a little bit about the state of Victoria. Now, many of you may know that it's at the bottom of Australia. And although we have a very modest population of 6.3 million people, we are, of course, the home of the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which I'm sure very many of you have heard of. And actually, within Australia, Victoria, the state of Victoria is, although 3% of the landmass, it is about 40% of the health and medical research activity. And it is also the home of the biggest Indian diaspora in Australia as well. So Victoria is a very important place for that relationship. So you've heard already that it's a place where there's a concentration of health and medical activity and interest and scientific endeavour. So I won't say much more about that. I'll just say that over the last few years, there's been a building of collaborative relationships between Australia and India, and also Victoria and India. And which has involved visits from our Premier, our Minister of Health, our Secretary of our department. So really, this is the next chapter, and we are very excited. I would like to say I'm very delighted to exchange this MOU today with IKP, between the State Government of Victoria and IKP. And we just look forward to it linking us even more and working on some fantastic challenges in this area of health. So thank you for inviting us today, and it's an absolute pleasure to exchange this.
Something that we have decided to actually exchange, and by that say that yes, we formally have a partnership going from today, and the exact nature of the partnership, as I said, will be put together in a much more granular fashion, but yes, thank you.
Assuring Roots and Wings. The session is being chaired by Mr. Utkarsh, who has over 30 years of experience in strategy planning and policy development. He's been instrumental in laying down India entry strategies for some of the largest global companies, and has set up life science practices for Ernst & Young and KPMG to build their market development. Could I call sir to start the session?
Yes, please. Good afternoon and welcome to our plenary session. Bhan with his address, followed by our next speaker, who I can guarantee will stick to her time, and you will soon realize why. She will not be even a few seconds beyond her allotted time. And after that speaker, we'll hear Dr. R.K. Srivastava talking about his experience as a policymaker in Karnataka. How do I even begin to introduce Dr. Bhan? I think I've got a big resume here in front of me. I think the simple way to introduce him is he's our national treasure. What you see around you in terms of the way the Department of Biotechnology has transformed the creation of BIRAC, for us here in Hyderabad, rotavirus is what we know him for, and several other inventions. He is a pediatrician, as you know, by training, and the infectious enthusiasm that he brings to any conversation or to any discussion is absolutely phenomenal and something to be experienced. He's got a list of accomplishments, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But you know, the more I describe this, I'm eating away the time and I'm standing between you and Dr. Bhan. You are in for indeed a great treat, and please join your hands to welcome Dr. M.K. Bhan.
I think what Utkarsh forgot to tell you is that he's a perpetually jet-lagged and way much older Dr. Bhan. It's wonderful to be here, and I mean that with sincerity. I have been away from biotechnology for the last 4 or 5 years. I had decided when I left DBT that I will have another go at a challenge, but that's directly more social, and try and see if I can fix a couple of things. So I had promised to myself that I'll get the nutrition mission for India redesigned, and I'm happy that the Prime Minister has released that, and also to work towards reform of the health system per se. But after coming here today and going around the stalls and seeing a very discernible upscaling of the kinds of challenges young people are addressing. I was always watching for years that the challenges we take when we are young are a little more ambitious, a little more difficult, potentially more valued, even not always transforming, and I was really delighted to see that change. I think this is like watching India, the future India in the making, and lots of love and affection and encouragement to everyone I saw there. Very beautiful to watch. The other thing that made me happy, I remember when Narayanan and this friend of mine and Dipan, with many of us used to chat about how to tweak this system and nudge this system into greater level of innovation. We had fascinating sessions about designing what is BIRAC, what are its value systems, do we need a CCAM, do we need this? I realized 2 things. I think good leadership is about taking decisions when things are uncertain. I think that's the challenge in this world. The past India always waited for too much clarity before they would plunge. The new India has to plunge when there is promise but uncertainty about the journey. And so I was thinking many of those decisions, they were small steps in a global perspective, but have triggered a lot of opportunity for many young people. And so I feel particularly happy that, and then Sri Kumar told me how much profit he made last year, and I was thinking even C6 is bubbling, so things are going good. I'm going to, what Dipanvita really asked me about is, where do we go from here? But also take a little bit more deep dive into the health sector as an example case. The lessons are generic, and so I will try and bring out a few things that we could do that could take us to the next stage. Leadership is about visualizing future by transforming yourself into the future and looking back. It's like you move from here and sit there and then say, let me look back and say, what should happen? It's a kind of reverse engineering, and I think a lot of it is pattern recognition, it is visualization, and the description kind of fits in slowly and gradually. You heard a lot of outstanding comments today about the way future might go. And I think it's very, very important for young Indians to have that sense of what tomorrow might be like, and have that in your oxput, because as you engage to choose your challenges, way back here, you have this sense of what kind of future am I designing what I want to engage with into, which is important. But there is also another kind of visualization, and which is really, what kind of society do we want? You know, technology disrupts, but social leaders have also to ask about what kind of planet or world do you need, and that's another kind of visioning which is very fundamental at the end, because whatever disrupts, you have to look at the big picture. And I think the SDGs as an idea, as a concept, was a good effort at that. It gives you a very integrated sense of not what do you do with health, what do you do with education, or what do we do with poverty or wages or cities and communication and so on and so forth. But it also gets you to look at them in connectivity. I remember when I was young, health used to be doctors. The advisors to governments were doctors. You barely see a doctor being consulted on shaping India's health system now. They look irrelevant. I was interviewing somebody for a new institution that I'm trying to build on health systems for Tatas. And you know, this guy said, I said, what salary do you expect? And he said, 2 crores a year. And I said, I didn't make 2 crores all my bloody life. And so what will you do with that money? You know, I was bringing him from China. He works for the World Bank there. Then I realized it is also reflection on what kind of people in health have value today, because we are for the first time thinking of a system rather than care of individuals, you know. So it was very transformative in the way things are shaping. So I think SDGs are a good way of keeping a perspective about human beings, animals, plants, oceans, space, in a very wholesome kind of way. And I kind of like, the more I contribute something to the UN Commission on SDGs, and when I hear there, I see a good sense of a social vision for future into which I believe technology should fit. I don't think we should only be predicting future, we should also be discussing how do we shape the future we want. And I think that doesn't come through technology, it comes through technology compels and drives us in certain directions, but social visioning counters that and does risk mitigation and does redesigning. And this is another force. And I think these are two parallel forces that must work together to eventually create the kind of world that we need, or the kind of planet that you want in future, you know. It's just not one track. And so SDGs in that sense are one prism into which we can look at technology, we can look at, you know, systems level analysis. What's happening in health? For the first time, we are talking about health and wellness as two different concepts, interrelated but different concepts. I like the articulation of the new Ethiopian DG of WHO. He said, let's create 1 billion more healthy people, well people in next 10 years. Now you can start reflecting on what does it mean to be healthy and well? And then you ask yourself a question, what is the innovation space that can create that? So there's scope for everything: service models, business models, innovative technologies, IT. It is a huge kind of opportunity. And so looking carefully into the needs of that system is a wonderful innovation opportunity for everything that you represent. Also, the distinction between health and healthcare is very important. I met a professor from Harvard who actually transformed China's health system. He's an old guy now, Bill Shah, but very wise person. So I took him to talk to all the senior officers of central government ministries about a month ago. And he said two things, he said, when China transformed its health system, they don't discuss through committees. He said the chairman said two things. He said, unleash experimentation in provinces and create a machinery to synthesize learning and bring it to the government. And second thing he said, discuss both health and healthcare. Don't only discuss hospitals and centers with me. So what he was trying to tell the government guys is that please do not stop experimenting with new systems. And that's a form of innovation. And it will unleash new requirements for technology when you think about the healthcare system. And so I think this is now happening, and you have to realize that for technology, what are the opportunities within this system? So one part of this change is universalization, or what we call universal healthcare. Essentially, it means that every individual in a country should be able to access the same healthcare. Two, nobody should have to pay a bill when they enter any kind of a health facility. Three, that for the healthiness agenda, prevention must be driven at every level, population and individuals. And this means, in some ways, Nachiket at Gates Foundation has a very nice UP example, and he says they spent some $1 billion, I think let's say 20 for a minute, in UP. Out of that, 18 billion come from people and 2 billion come from government. So universal healthcare means when this 18 billion and 2 billions are pooled together to create a single brilliantly administered fund, so that risk pooling creates the new health system. This is a hugely complex task in terms of institutional mechanisms, and that's why, as you have seen what India has gone in for the new scheme that was launched by the government is actually a social protection scheme for people with less incomes, but does not move into a genuine pooling system that will drive universal health care. And that, the day we achieve that, the demand for technology and services in the healthcare sector will transform. 100-fold, 1,000-fold, many, many thousand-fold. So it will be a demand creation initiative, a health system reform initiative, accessing, financing, and provisioning model of thinking in which these words like public sector, private sector, these will stop having any sense. Everyone will participate. It will unleash a demand in the health sector, so the markets expand massively, massively. And that thinking is currently going on. It will require some brilliant minds to be able to think through how to bring this change. I would say Niti Aayog multiplied by 1,000 in brilliance is what it will take to design such a system in practice. And the tools and the systems and the processes for digital, for technology, for diagnostic systems, for telemedicine, a whole lot of things would have to be done. But that, I think we are at the brink of thinking through that mission. I mentioned about 1 billion more. Essentially what is happening in our societies is a lot of people have serious morbidity at 40, 45 years of age. They're going on. They're functioning at a suboptimal level. Their attitudes are influenced by this illness. So diabetes, heart disease, all kinds of crazy things are there in the middle of the age. These are not aging diseases. These are actually middle-aged diseases. And this has huge economic costs. And that's what the wellness agenda is for. I work with married couples who are likely to have children to try and see what we can do in that space. And what I discovered is that 30% of young married women have at least one serious unknown morbidity. 10% of women had hypothyroidism. I was just shocked when I saw this. And that means all these hypothyroid women are bringing children in where the fetus grows without enough thyroid hormone in circulation. You can understand how many IQ points are lost through that process. So there are these challenges, and this is a huge goal for us. And every kind of technology is needed for this. And the third challenge is to prepare this world for outbreaks and epidemics. I don't know what will come ahead. We had the Ebola experience. So we've launched a global initiative now is to keep the world prepared technologically, in terms of surveillance systems, in terms of detection systems of animals, humans, because many of these viruses interface between animals and humans, and have vaccines ready, available, stockpiled for this world against almost 20 dangerous viruses that have been identified. And then have manufacturing systems where if there is an outbreak somewhere, you can produce a new vaccine in 2 weeks. It's unthinkable today. So when you think about vaccine platforms, you look at them from the prism of manufacturability without regulation. This example, for example, is RNA as a vaccine delivery platform. A company could produce and commercialize a new vaccine where all the work has already been done within 3 or 4 weeks of an outbreak if you were dealing with RNA as a delivery system. And there are many such breakthrough technology platforms. So we are now into a phase of preparing for future on multiple levels, and these visions are becoming to be articulated bigger. Now, it's interesting. So we launched a $1 billion fund for preparedness for outbreaks. I have to say my disappointment was that when we screened all the applications from all over the world, I didn't see enough coming from India. And I will explain to you why I think that might be happening, and that be a lesson for it. And this $1 billion was available to any company in the world to help the world prepare for future. And there were guarantees of purchase of X amount to make this profitable. So in general, that's what is happening as a preparation for future. Now, in this whole new health agenda, science, technology, innovation, and policy, and radically new ways of collaboration are 5 tools that will help. I don't see financing as a problem, because when we collected this $1 billion for this outbreak technology preparation in 8 months' time, because all the governments were willing to chip in when they realized that maybe half the population of this world may disappear with one pandemic, and so people are quite frightened by what emerging viruses can do, So India's ability to prepare and seize these opportunities as a contribution to India and to the world, but also as an innovation opportunity, transforming manufacturing technologically for these niche needs. These are fascinating opportunities. We need to think about how we can be strongly participant there. There are also some, in this whole health scenario, some transformational needs for technology. So I give you just one example. One end is the ability to manufacture without regulation fast. The other side of it is, let's say, for example, self-administered diagnosis. Imagine a world in which, pregnancy tests. I work in a lot of slums with poor people, and I know that all the young women in those poor communities, they actually use two things all the time: the pregnancy tests and the eye pills that are used for self-administered abortion if they don't want a baby. They actually don't need doctors for all this. This is the transformative power of a self-administered test. So if all Indians, or couple of million, 100 million Indians have to be healthy, imagine a battery of self-administered technologies where you assess your health and family health without a damn doctor. Can you imagine what this would be like? So here, new platforms, new intermediaries of the diagnostic system, detector systems, coding systems, a whole lot of, even the next generation of point of care is a massive opportunity. Detecting disease before there are clinical. Can you imagine a system where every cancer is detected before the tumor is half a centimeter in size, so that it can be readily removed? There is, when infection occurs or a biology change begins before pathology and clinical disease becomes manifest, there is a time window. Detecting that problem at that time would transform medicine and human health. So UK launched an initiative. There was a meeting that UK government convened, and they said, we have $1 billion to give us one challenge. So we were about 20 of us, and we thrashed our heads together, and we picked up this one. So there are these unique challenges which they are not only outstanding in terms of science and innovation opportunities, but they will have massive transformational effect. So imagine if all of us could give ourselves once every 6 months a cancer test at home, and which would detect cancer in urine or saliva, in blood, before a growth somewhere in the body was larger than half a centimeter. Just imagine the effect that it would have. Are these plausible? From a lot of interesting stuff that I hear with the Harvard Hughes Fellows, with a lot of young, interesting people that the Gates Foundation funds, it looks to me like 70% of the problem is solved, and it's just improving performance characteristics. So they look, what you hear 5 years earlier sounds like just fiction. 7, 8 years later, it actually looks like real. I think we had this experience with artificial intelligence and robotics. We thought it will take about 50 years before it becomes real, and now you slowly begin to hear it's there. And so the new agenda for wellness, happiness, healthiness, as well as universalization of healthcare requires this policy and systems level transformation, but then we need the technologies to feed into that. And that is kind of amazing. I have been leading some design groups on trying to visualize the future primary care system. So whatever the government is thinking in terms of universal health care is a disaster without primary care, because it will become unaffordable. Everyone will go to tertiary hospitals, and the whole 50% of India's budget will be spent on health care. We need primary care. And the question is, how do you design it? So what are we coming up with? Technology problems, systems design problems, even design becomes critical, is the digital systems, connectivity, I was very excited. I saw somebody who has a nice prescription pad, and I was thinking, I need this for the new primary care system. You know, how does the same readout of a patient's assessment be accessible to a doctor in a health and wellness center, a district hospital, or an apex hospital? That kind of connectivity and systems design and technology would be required from the digital side. In a similar way, diagnostics, really transformative, the screening diagnostics. We want to screen the entire India's population at least twice a year for the things that matter. So visualizing the systems transformation allows you to see what kind of technologies in IT or digital or diagnostics or data systems, better use of data systems will be designed. So I think there is an incredible opportunity down there. Now, a word about where are we, what are we doing right now? When we think globally in terms of research and innovation, it works at two levels. One is at a strategic level. That's what companies do generally. And mostly they work with the known, and there is a little bit of unknown that they try to solve. It has a purpose. So for example, affordable vaccines for a country like India, or better formulations on known targets, or better ways of predicting and preventing spread of disease, interactions between microbiome, metabolism, and environment, and there are huge opportunities learning there. These are one very interesting zone from India. So if you look at the vaccine industry in India, this is what we did well. We were strategic. We did not try to rediscover. I chair the biopharmaceutical mission for BIRAC. And when I looked at the applications, we had close to about $250 million to spend. When I looked at the application, the only area where I could actually find good strategic research and innovation was in vaccine. I didn't see it in pharma, and I didn't see it in devices. So I realized that the pipeline of innovation is not strong enough as yet. And so it was interesting that there were applications for new dengue vaccine platforms, chikungunya, Zika, there were common influenza. I saw a lot of interesting groups, even people who had made startups from academia with good applications. And so this is a space which is very useful for India because it gives us cheaper products, it builds our manufacturing, and there is a mid-level innovation involved in each of these things. It's engineered by some. I was very happy when I saw this slide about Indians work with food and laughter, and so the way we do technology transfer for vaccines is actually we pay nothing. It's just affection and charm with the world community. You will be amazed how much technology transfer we do for $20,000, $15,000. It's all DBT's friendships globally. It's just amazing how relationship management and being attractive as a country, as government, as industry, how much people are. So some excellent high-value technology came from NIH with very little money. And now BIRAC is putting in large sums of money to make sure that the epidemiology and the trials and all those things happen. So this is the strategic kind of known-unknown space research. But there is another type of research that doesn't seem to be happening much here. That is research which is informed on strong basic science but is exploratory in nature. Craig Venter is a very good example of that. He plunged himself and sequenced a human genome. He sequenced the first human microbiome. He produced the first replicating synthesized organism. people used to think that he's crazy. No, he was plunging the world into application by taking on that exploratory challenge. Now the same replicating synthetic organisms are being used to produce nanoscale materials for application. Bacteriophages have been modified to produce nanoscale materials. New enzymes, unnatural enzymes, molecules are being produced through this system. This is the kind of stuff that our academia should plunge into. So where I think we have confused the message for academia, when I sit at IIT Delhi once in a while, and when I talk to them, many of the students come and tell me, I want to serve the poor in India. It reminds me of the socialist India that I grew up in. And so I keep telling them that you can't even look after yourself. What will you do for the poor? So this is a kind of an articulation by us that if you engage with the basic science founded exploratory application, you are not serving India. But it is only the bottom of the pyramid. They don't realize that there may not be a bottom of the pyramid in 10 years' time, and the aspirations of the bottom of the pyramid may be radically different. The needs will be radically different. And so in some ways, I think our science agencies and all of us need to reshape the conversation and to tell academia there is a missing space in India. So 10, 15 years down the line, I don't see enough of that type of innovation. And these can be, so it's not doing basic science, but it is exploring basic science for a transforming innovation, Right? Imagine if you have a phage-based system for producing molecules at a nanoscale, it's amazing that we should be able to create new enzymes and chemicals, in these unnatural processes. Even the technology platforms that will transform manufacturing, we gave a grant. I chair a committee. We gave a grant to a small biotech in UK. They made a presentation 2-3 months ago. Essentially, the presentation they made is that biologicals can be manufactured in every basement of this world at 1,000th the cost of the multinational companies today. And what this guy said, they are selling this world for a song. People who make vaccines, people who produce monoclonals or engineered, and the whole manufacturing process does not need to be as complex as it is. This was brilliant. Things like this will create opportunity. Now, these are startups, but they are at a higher end of the exploration of opportunity. And I think this is where a very strong academic background in the environment is needed. I don't see this at IITs, and I don't see this in biology schools in general. So somewhere we have to ask the question, are we not nudging them in the right way? I think in some ways we are kind of prescribing a lot to institutions, and that is against curiosity-driven innovation, that is against bold, courageous, transforming exploration. You have to let people do what they do. And I think there is too much orchestration and direction from funding agencies. And it is killing that spirit. And I can't believe we don't have such people. And somewhere this change needs to occur for India to be a leader in the future. And so this is one area that I think is, now what can IKP and these type of institutions and BIRACs do is make sure that visualization of these spaces and opportunities are graphically put in front of the young, so they know what is happening in the world. you have to be in India and know everything about every lab in the world, and I think that's where we need to articulate this, so that the challenge gets framed at multiple levels. The strategic level where you produce useful things of improved quality for India, very important. I don't undermine that at all. But at the second level is the kinds of innovation that needs more understanding of basic science and engineering and biological chemistry and, the interconvert between genetic and digital code, the microbiome, these type of spaces. We need to take more challenges in that space. And I think many of the future startups in biotech could be of that nature, but we have then to discuss scaling up funding. What Nalateshwar said earlier, when I gave the first grant on energy to Tatas, I saw a nasty piece written by the Environmental Center in Delhi on why DBT is funding large companies. That scheme was created to encourage large industry to do what was called technological preparation for future. The scheme was approved by cabinet, but such is our environment that if you do this, the system doesn't understand what you're trying to do. Now, this is again the challenge of scientific literacy of governments, agriculture systems, medical systems, and the public at large. I don't think we did that well enough. Agriculture suffered as a result of that. Today, the whole world is discussing regulation of CRISPR. In India, there's no discussion at all. We just gave up, So this, I think, is also fundamentally important. We should not give up on that. The medical system is illiterate in science. The agriculture system is illiterate in science. And so is the public, and this is our failure. And we need to go back to, if we have to play in this space, we should do that. And I think we, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, in many, many areas of, I was just thinking of ultrasound. We used to use steroids for premature babies. We give it to the mother, we administer it to the baby immediately after birth. We discovered that babies are dying of infection in India but not elsewhere in the world because we don't know actually who is premature. Now, the way you know reliably who is premature is that at the beginning of pregnancy, a dating ultrasound is done. So we had to stop a wonderful innovation, which is steroids for lung maturation for premature birth. We had to stop it in India because we don't have a way to diagnose premature. The mother doesn't know for sure. But if we have to do ultrasound across this country at district level or sub-district level, we don't have radiologists. Can you imagine if you have an AI-based system, what transformative the effect would be? So when you look at these new opportunities, technology is always neutral, value neutral. Our design challenge is to say, how do I use this technology so that it actually brings a plus in my context? That context will change in 20 years' time or 30 years' time when more Indians age. So there are brilliant opportunities for robotics, for AI in health and agriculture, but somebody needs to landscape that opportunity intelligently so people know where to apply it. Now, if the AI machine learning guys are in engineering schools, this knowledge of context is with those health people who understand the whole health system, but not only the individual patient system. So masters of the health system. And we need interface agencies that can do this articulation to keep our scientific community at the forefront of this understanding, So I think everything is valuable to India. How to enhance that value is our challenge. And this is a design challenge of opportunity. It's a mapping opportunity and communicating that to people. So we actually issued from BIRAC a small grant for AI machine learning for generating ideas from large cohorts in India about what causes linear growth retardation in Indian children. We were worried about India's stunting, and so we did that. And we got 100 applications in the first call, and we were happy. So in some ways, we've tried to give a nudge that there are India's social problems where AI can be very helpful in understanding. So I think this is, and Dipanvita, when you ask me, what else can IKP Knowledge Park do? This type of thing, now Niti Aayog is incapable of doing this type of deep dive for the scientific and engineering community. And I think we have to do those issues. And similarly, use of public health data. Can you imagine how much data each state collects? It's used for nothing, not for program redesign, not for mapping so that we can concentrate on some areas and districts with different interventions, not even for knowing whether we are doing better. It just rots there. So here is a huge opportunity for a service industry that would actually contract this. We have good laws, I think, and we can, reasonably assure each other that data won't be misused. We could make India a great learner from the information it collects. So there are some incredible opportunities out there which will create business and innovation. It will stimulate creation of new technology platforms or systems to do that. Finally, I did mention about new ways of collaboration. I think something has changed, but nothing large scale has changed. So I give you an example of human phenomics. You won't need knockout models in future if we can get our act right about using humans as the animal model for future. I funded one such in THSTI, which has actually been beautifully done. It is on premature birth and fetal growth restriction, a human cohort with a biobank where all omics technologies are available. We don't have enough people who can create imaginative questions and applications out of that treasure that it is. I built one more for pre-pregnancy, so of all married couples getting pregnant and having children, follow them for 5-6 years, and built a biobank and use all omics and new protein, metabolome, microbiome-like analysis to get totally new insights about what happens, right? And so these are incredible opportunities. They're happening, but in a minuscule scale when I look at the efforts in many. So these are these missed opportunities that prepare us for opportunities in future, and these require very powerful collaborations. The toolbox of collaboration needs to be transformed. I think it needs to be taught in schools, in business schools, in engineering schools, in medical schools. One course must be on the science and art of collaboration, the tools of collaboration. So they grow with understanding what team science is about, and there is a huge opportunity here. I think governance of science and innovation should have another look. We have these periods when there is freshness and change, and I think when BIRAC was created, it was a period. We need to revisit governance and create even whether it is regulation, whether it is procurement of technology from startups by government. All these processes need to be changed, and this conversation needs to have depth and clarity. And so I think the government is open, but we do need to work hard at transformation of governance. I would say one revolution that India needs is